Hey Bat fans, Luke here, back with my next installment of Batmas 2020, and today we're going to take a look at the trade Batman and Robin Pearl. I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about the Batman and Robin title before going into this story. Batman and Robin, the title itself, actually started during the Grant Morrison run. You actually had 4 volumes of that, and 3 of which tied in directly with the Morrison run, and they had a 4th. It's actually had the creative team in this incarnation of the Batman and Robin title as part of that run. Then you had the New 52, and Batman and Robin had a bunch of different trades as part of the series collected during the New 52. The first one, which I think everyone, sort of almost agrees might be the best, and that's the first one. It's called Born to Kill. Then you had Pearl. Then you had kind of like a Death of the Family kind of tie-in. And at that point, that's when you had the Death of Damien. Then you had the next volume, Requiem of Damien. It kind of had like the 5 stages of grief. It's actually a pretty good story. Then you had kind of a break away from Batman and Robin, sort of, with the story The Big Burn, which was a reimagining of the origin for Two-Face for the New 52. And then after that, you kind of had a two-part story. Not really two-part story. 2 trades that kind of talked about the return of Robin, the Hunt of Robin, and then Robin Rises. And after that, pretty much the title since then kind of ceased. And of all those titles, or all those trades within that run, this is the one I think it gets kind of lost a little bit. Because it kind of gets, I think, again, kind of sandwiched in between a very good solo Batman and Robin, kind of left on its own with Born to Kill, which tells the story of Batman and Robin coming together in the story. While you have an underlying thread with their fight against the Nobody, it's really of a study of their relationship between a father and son, Batman and Robin. And then again, like I said, after this you had the Death of the Family kind of tie-in part of which had some really good tie-ins. Probably one of the better tie-ins to that whole event. And then after that, you had the hype for the Two-Face origin. Some people liked it, some people don't. For me, preferred a Long Halloween, but for the New 52 concept, I dug it. And then obviously after that, you had the Return of Robin. But this one again kind of gets left out. And what makes the Batman and Robin title under the helm of Peter Tomasi, and you had Patrick Gleason do the art for the very vast majority of the run, was that it was very character-centric, whereas again you kind of have a main plot of the story, where this one you actually have a couple smaller stories collected in this trade. Is actually 4 stories collected in this. You have 2 one-shots, a 3-parter, and a 2-parter. But you'll have the main story being told in one of those story runs. But within you have something weaved through, like some sort of concept, some sort of message, some thesis that Peter Tomasi's trying to tell you about. More than likely, probably Robin in this. Whereas, obviously, Batman has a big part of this. Cause I almost think, with the exception, obviously, of the Two-Face story, it's almost like the main heart of this whole New 52 Batman and Robin run was actually Damien. You almost, but that was the heart, the character. We talked a little bit about Grant Morrison before in his run on Batman, where it really wasn't Batman the main part of his story. His run was more Bruce Wayne. This one, I almost say it's Damian Wayne, Robin. And don't get me wrong, Batman plays a huge part in this. Obviously, there's an equal part of the equation, the two. But I think that is something that really Tomasi really focuses on this run. And this trade, again, I think it goes kind of under the radar. And to be perfectly honest, no story really stands out as like oh my god, that was a fantastic story. But they're good. And again, and it's some of it, I think it's more theme. It's very thematic. They're very thematic stories. And I think they're all ones that you will enjoy. The first one is actually the 0 issue. So DC, their year anniversary for the new 52, they released these thing called 0 issues, where they kind of tell like the origins of their characters. And this one doesn't really deal with Batman very much at all. This is more focusing on kind of like Damien's origin, and this kind of goes back to Batman and Son and kind of elaborates more a little bit on that story. Kind of gets the depth of Damien trying to find out, you know, who his father is. And there's this one iconic image here. It's just, I'm sure we've seen it. Just, it's so good. And the art by this in the story by Gleason's great. But again, this kind of flushes out some of the back matter, some of the context that we had in that Batman and Son story. And if you don't believe me, obviously if you read Batman and Son, this is almost a copy of that iconic scene at the end of the issue where you actually see him with the exact words, you know, "Father, I imagined you taller." Obviously Gleason given his take on it. But again, it kind of provides more of a context. So I actually think this is probably the best story in here, to be honest. But again, one thing I'll just warn you going into this, these aren't going to be like 5 out of 5 stories, but they're all going to have meaning, and they're going to be fun to read. And if you kind of get the thesis of what Tomasi's telling each one of these stories, you'll find the joy in it. This next one, to be honest, was the my least favorite story in this one. It's called Robin Here's a Who. This is the tie-in to the Court of Owls story that was going on. And to be honest, Tomasi, he gets kind of hung up in a lot of the event kind of crossover stories, the tie-ins, that I think sometimes interrupts his rhythm and the momentum he's got going on in the story. I mean, we just recently saw it in the Year of the Villain when he had that Mr. Freeze story, which wasn't bad, but you can just tell it definitely kind of took him off his rhythm a little bit, the momentum he had going on. But this one, again, I get it. Batman, if you don't get the whole context of the Night of the Owls, is like this is when all the Talons released to assassinate this list of individuals who are pretty much powerful people in Gotham. And basically what happens, and this is while, you know, Wayne Manor's getting overrun, Alfred dispatches a member of the Bat family to kind of go guard or protect, you know, the people on this list. And this one is the adjutant general of Gotham, who actually has a family ties with, you know, the Talon, this in particular Talon that he's trying to get vengeance for. And Damien, you know, thwarts his attack, whatever. It was, again, for a tie-in, okay, but for this trade, you can just kind of tell this was like kind of just beefing up the trade a little bit. Which leads us to the next story, which is a 3-parter, and this is one that I think is the best story in the book. Again, not a 5 out of 5, but you can see the thesis kind of coming at some point that Tomasi's trying to tell in this, and you kind of have this villain Terminus that's kind of used as a kind of moniker to kind of get that thesis across. And this villain Terminus, what he is what he's doing is he's bringing all these people who've been scarred by the Bat. It's almost kind of like, if you remember in Batman versus Superman, the people that the Batman was bringing in, he had like that iron sear that seared the Bat symbol into the the chest of the villain. These are all these people that kind of have some sort of scar that was caused by Batman, whether it be physical, mental, whatever the case may be. And this person, Terminus, is like on his deathbed, is bringing them together, and he's gonna find a way to get back at Batman. Best way to do it is to really get after the people of Gotham, terrorize them. He terrorized them with the use of the symbol of the Batman, and, the protector of Gotham, turn awry and causing them pain and misery. And throughout this subplot that you kind of get, again, the thesis that I think Tomasi's trying to tell in this story, the main thread that kind of pulls through, is the relationship between Damien and the other Robins. This case being, you'll have Jason Todd, Tim Drake, and Dick Grayson. If you don't know, early on, the relationship between Tim Drake and Damian Wayne, to say abrasive would be a severe understatement. That even goes back to their first introduction back in Batman and Son. It was bad from the jump, and while you kind of saw a little bit of that kind of turn just a little bit during the resurrection of Ra's al Ghul, just a little bit, it's still not perfect, and it's still kind of, again, abrasive, and you actually see this one scene, which you kind of wish. I've granted at this point, Jason Todd, Red Hood's still kind of on the outs a little bit, but there's something that Bruce kind of wants to do to bring the family together. He kind of comes up with this family portrait where you have Damien, Tim Drake, Dick Grayson, Alfred. It would have been nice to have Jason Todd there, but neither case, is that the relationship specifically between those two is kind of rough. And what basically comes down to is that Robin, keeping in mind, again, Damien, he's so egocentric, and he just by design. Again, this is not toward the end of this run with obviously Batman Incorporated. You see this even more of a turn, but really at the end of this Batman and Robin series, you do see like almost a full evolution of the character, but he's still the conniving little snot. That's done by design, and what he basically calls every one of the Robins together, obviously in the past, basically saying, "Hey, I'm better than you, and I'm gonna prove it. I'm gonna come to you one at a time. I'm gonna beat you. I'm gonna take what probably is your strength and make it a weakness." And it's so Damien, to be honest. And his first one, I mean, this is what ultimately when his first one he actually picks on is Tim Drake, and there's actually a thread that you have to read Teen Titans, kind of get the gist what he's doing with the colony, not the colony we know in the new in Rebirth, but this is just Damien talking shit to him, and he's in this chair and he's got this little smirk, and it's just pisses off Tim Drake. But but the thing is, what he's trying to get after is like, hey, Damien's telling him, you think you're so much better than me, but you always come here. I'm off the hinge. I'm violent. I can kill. But she's like, you know what? You almost did the same thing. Like, you know what? You're no better than I am, which I thought that was really clever. And again, you kind of see Terminus, and what he's doing, he's injecting himself with this kind of serum. Again, on the deathbed, he's trying to take it to Batman. But again, you kind of have two stories going on, but underneath everything is going to be, the Robins. What's important? It's the Robins. Next person he comes in contact with is Jason Todd. Of course, he's going to come at him with the Joker and the crowbar, and just look as he's leaving, he just singing a little tune on the Bat Cycle with Red Hood's mask, just talking shit, whatever. And Jason Todd's kind of myth, but either here, he doesn't get to Dick Grayson, and I think that's obviously because they have a very special bond between the two. You obviously read the Grant Morrison run, Batman and Robin run. You'll know why. But you do see them come together against this common threat, Terminus. Again, you have the Gotham's about to fall, but ultimately what happens, what saves everything, it's the Robins coming together with obviously Batman. Kind of comes up with this cool suit to fight Terminus, who ultimately perishes, but in doing so perishes right before all the Robins come in, and I just love that design. Great image. and thwarts Terminus's plan. And again, the story on face value with the Terminus angle is nothing really original. Nothing's gonna wow you, but if you get the thesis of what Tomasi's trying to tell you with the relationship, a lot of this title, it's relationships. It's how people interact with each other. Batman and Robin. In this case, this is Damien with all the Robins. Again, this is a very Robin-centric title. You'll get the real story I think Tomasi's trying to tell you. Is again very thematic. The last one is a two-parter called Eclipse. And this is kind of like the theme of what we saw in the main cover. And it's really kind of a death of the family sort of tie-in. But within it, Damien, at this point you have to understand is that the relationship between Talia and Damien is kind of thwarted. And at this point, Talia has put on like a $500 million bounty on Damien's head. So Bruce is kind of trying to keep Damien as much, kind of off the streets as much as he can, knowing that all these assassins are coming after him. But they open up before really anything happens. Is that Batman takes Damien up into space, and it's really just at this time there's this eclipse that's going on. It's a solar eclipse, but when this happens, there's obviously this big satellite that's out in space that kind of gives a lot of Batman's technological edges, so he's got to make sure the satellite works. But he goes up and he brings Damien with him to really, his initial thing is, obviously see the eclipse that, that Damien says, I see many of them, no big deal. But he tells the importance of this satellite. But then you have a nice little father-son moment here, which ultimately Damien does appreciate, but then goes into, he asks the pointed questions, did you love my mother? And Batman comes, hey, there was a time, yes, but it kind of is what it is. But they end up sharing a very nice father and son moment. Again, this is something Tomasi's going to do very well in this run, is that you think you're getting the story about the eclipse, but turns out to be kind of like a modified, zombie apocalypse sort of. It's a cult thing. But really the backdrop in this is really the relationship. Sorry for the sirens. This is unfortunately what you kind of run into if you do your outside videos. But anyway, the main thing Tomasi's trying to tell you in this story is the relationship between Damien and Bruce. And if you remember when Martha Wayne died, all the pearls got ripped off, and then you've seen in various different forms or fashions, either in books or in movies, the pearls hit the ground and they roll, some go down the sewer. Well, Damien, I'm not going to ruin the ultimate twist in this because it's not really specifically said in the beginning, but as you read the story, you're going to say this is kind of like a ho-hum story. But what you see ultimately in the last 2-3 pages, it's just, if you're a parent, this is going to tug at your heart. And when you see what Damien did, it's almost something very similar you would have seen, you'll see later with, there's a firefly that you'll see sprinkled throughout earlier, especially in Born to Kill, but you'll see it toward the end of the Batman and Robin run. And those who read it, you'll kind of know the reference I'm getting at. But the gesture that ultimately, well, Batman thought it was just Damien being a rebellious little kid, it was actually a really nice gesture by Damien, which has a lot of meaning, and it'll tug on your heart a little bit. So, all in all, again, none of these stories are epic. None of these stories are going to go down the testament of time, but they're good thematic stories. And you'll kind of get the gist as you're reading this, like, okay, the main plot, I see where Tomas is going this, but really, the theme is more important in this trade. And again, you read them, they're going to be good stories, but they're even better once you pick up on the theme that Tomasi's trying to tell you and why he's telling those stories. All in all, I'll give this a 3.75 out of 5, kind of flirting on a 4. The reason being, again, the stories are just they're not great. Art's great. Art's very good. But these aren't like, again, epic tales. But the themes are. And that's the only thing that's kind of holding this back, is it's like overall, it's just, they're good. They're just not great. But still good meaning to it. Readily available. This is hardcover. This thing, it's out in trade paperback. Single issues are easy to get a hold of. Really no excuse to get this. So anyway, 3.75 out of 5 with my highest endorsement to check this out. And then obviously Tomasi and Gleason's Batman and Robin run as a whole. Anyway, those are my thoughts on this particular trade. Hit me up in the comments below if you read it. Love the Bat Chat. We'll talk about it and kind of go from there. So until next video, take care.